Do you ever sit around and wonder what else you could be doing with Mod Podge? Because if you do, this video is packed with 10 of my favorite hacks to create DIYs using Mod Podge, and we're going to start this countdown at number 10. For our glitter stencils, I'm going to use mirrors for our demonstration and some Dollar Tree stencils again. But you could use whatever you want for this. It doesn't have to be a mirror. It could just be regular glass. And obviously people use whatever color glitter you want. I'm using this one because I thought it would show up the most on film out of the 3 options that I had here at the house. Make sure you tape this down, and you're going to also just want to do one at a time. So if you're doing several, do one at a time because you need that Mod Podge to be wet. You don't want it to dry. And I would not recommend using a pouncer or a sponge for this. You don't want to oversaturate it because then it's going to extremely smush underneath of these stencils, and it's possible that those glittery bits are going to get underneath of there. So I kind of just took a brush and tapped all over it. It takes a little bit of patience, but it gets the job done. Just move quickly. You know what I mean? Like tap, 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 as fast as you can. And then you're going to do the same thing with the glitter. Look at this tap motion. Tap, tap. I got the tapping skills, man. I got them down. Now here comes the worst part. That's waiting for this to dry. And it's hard to gauge because you cannot see anything on this. It's just covered with glitter everywhere. But to be safe, I recommend at least an hour, and then tap off your excess as you flip this upside down. And people, if I'm being real with y'all, I didn't wait the full hour, which is why I'm telling you to wait the full hour. And you can see that there's still a little bit of wet Mod Podge right here as I'm peeling these off. But on the reveal, you can barely see any of that Mod Podge because it's clear. It just blends in. I thought these would look so cute in a kid's room. I've been experimenting a lot with Mod Podge lately, thanks to a lot of your comments, by the way. And one of my favorite things I've learned is that we can create beautiful colored glass decor with a little bit of food coloring and some Mod Podge. One of my recent trips to Dollar Tree, I seen these beautiful pieces, and I'm constantly told on my browsing channel that people struggle to find the things that I see in stores. Are you hanging out with me on my browsing channel? Because if you're not, here's your plug. The amount of Mod Podge and the amount of food coloring you're going to use is going to be entirely up to the size of the project that you're going to be doing. I only used 3 little dots of the food coloring here to get this pigment. And keep in mind, you might need to mix up another batch. This stuff does not sit well for long periods of time. It hardens really quick. It also dries really quick, so that's a good thing. Do clean your glass before you get started with any glass project. I used rubbing alcohol and just let that dry, and I'm using a soft paintbrush here to apply this. I'm making sure my strokes are fairly even because we are going to be able to see them on our first coat especially, and if you leave any heavy spots, you're going to have clumps there and it looks a little tacky. So doing a second coat, at least at the minimum, it's going to make it look nicer. I would recommend 3 coats, but for the sake of the video, I just did 2, okay? And to keep in theme with the Dollar Tree one, I took some little, nautical gem keychain things that I had laying around from a purchase I made at Amazon and put them around the neck of our little glass piece. And people, I do know another way you can create this is by taking the food color and the Mod Podge and swirling it around the inside, heating it up in the oven. But I thought to myself, I wanted to use the inside of that glass for cotton balls or Q-tips or whatever. I didn't want that product on my piece, but I still wanted to get that same beautiful colored look, and I thought this was a great idea. Let's make a door hanger with this giant pine cone. This sucker is probably a good 10 inches long. It is really, really big, as you can see me holding it here in my hands. And you can take this idea and remix it into whatever works for you. I'm just going to use glitter and the Mod Podge. You could add paint, you could add glitter and paint. You could do this with mica powder as well and create a mica powder paint. I'm just taking some glitter and some Mod Podge and putting all around the edges of the pine cone, and making sure that I am doing it upside down because we're going to hang the pine cone upside down. And in case you're wondering, because I have been getting questions anytime somebody sees these were sent to me from a subscriber. She was kind enough to clean these off. She had an abundant amount and she sent them to me. I did not purchase these anywhere. For those who keep asking where did I get them, I've been trying to let everyone know that I had a kind person send them to me. And I've been trying to give you as many ideas as I can with these. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in just a pine cone dedicated video, because I have a ton of supplies left and I'd be happy to do that, to just make an extra little DIY video with a few projects using some pine cones. People, I'm going to be real with you here. I was not sure how I wanted to hang this sucker. I am sure there are a ton of ways I could have went about it, but I decided to make sure that the piece was all connected and really well put together. So I took this ribbon from Dollar Tree and I smooshed it in between the thick part of our pine cone here, and then I made a loop and I took and made some dovetail ends. I then took some of this greenery from Dollar Tree with the little cranberries and shoved it in the top and put it on the front door. Absolutely beautiful in the sun. You can see all the glitter stuck on there so well. A very trendy thing going on in the crafty world right now with Mod Podge is called the Mod Podge Swirl method. You're able to get these faux stained, faux frosted glass looks by swirling Mod Podge on the back of some glass. It's been my experience that finding the floating frames with 2 pieces of glass gives some of the best results. You can pick these up at Dollar Tree, Walmart, you know, they got them laying around. So I'm just going to leave the front of the glass inside of our piece here, and I'm going to take the back part out. We're going to use a little bit of alcohol to get any excess off of this, just clean our glass up. And recently I've been told, because I've made a bunch of these videos, I'll link them down in the description box for you, that putting black behind the glass is going to give you guys a better view. So to those of you that have been suggesting that, here we go. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoy this view better versus the white background. To get started, pick your stickers, pick your stencil, pick your transfers, whatever you want to do. I've done a multitude of things here. They all yield pretty great results. I'm using some Timu stickers here, and I'm just going to rub them right on the front. I happen to like the stickers because they just give me a quick result, and I thought these were really nice looking. I'm now going to just kind of flip that little piece right on over and clean the back of the glass. You're going to need glossy Mod Podge for this. I've tried mixing matte and glossy, and I've tried just matte, and I definitely get the best result using glossy Mod Podge for this. Pour a little bit out on a plate or wherever, take 2 fingers and then just start swirling, and you just do this all over the back of the piece. If you're happy with those results once they've dried, and this is going to take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, it really just depends on how thick. I wouldn't go in too heavy. The thicker it is, there's more of a chance of bubbles, and some people don't like the bubbles. If the bubbles don't bother you, then by all means go ham with how thick you're applying this. And here's the first layer, and I thought this actually turned out really beautiful, but from experience, I know putting that second layer on there is just going to elevate that swirl a little bit more and give you a little bit more of depth to your piece. So I did another layer, and it is always a little hard to see, but I tried to give several different angles here so you guys can really get in on it. I absolutely love these pieces and making these projects. I have several videos with this down in the description box if you're interested in seeing more. A recent trip to Dollar Tree, I grabbed these foil flakes in all 3 colors because I have no self-control, but because I have no faith in them, I also ordered some gold foil off of Amazon. What are we doing, Brandi? What's the hack? Well, recently on TikTok, I know TikTok's got all the goodies, I seen somebody using Mod Podge to attach gold foil, and I was like, oh, we gonna try this. Truth be told, I have really never used gold foil, especially not like this. And I know that they have that adhesive glue, but I've seen enough furniture artists do enough beautiful projects with it, so I had some expectations. Not extremely high though, because the TikTok video did share that you have to apply the foil as the Mod Podge is drying. It's like in a tacky stage. I don't know if you've ever like stared at Mod Podge like I do, but it has stages. Really wet, kind of dry, then it's like kind of tacky, and then you think it's dry, but there's still some wet spots. You know, it goes through stages. This stuff is super thin. I mean, like super thin. It was so easily like disintegrating in my hand. So I felt like this was at a good point that I could just start pressing and tappity tap 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 in it right on the outside of the letters. I purchased these for me because someday I'm gonna have a nice little background behind me, and this is the R and the S in the DIY struggle, and I wanted different lettering, so I thought gold would look really cool on the outside of one, and then we would have the 3 colors on the outside of the other. Just in case you guys are wondering, what is the R and the S about, Brandi? As you can see, this is easy enough, right? I didn't paint a whole section with the Mod Podge, just a little section. But I can tell you, if it dries, it is not tacky at all. And like right here, that side had already dried. It was not sticking. And then see how it's wet? It almost melts the gold foil. So it definitely matters that as you're applying this, that the Mod Podge is at that tacky stage. So small sections and then, you know, move on. I decided to take this out back on my patio to get the extra foil off, and I know I didn't have the proper brush that they recommend, so I just had a chippy brush, a really soft chippy brush laying around, and figured we're going to do this. And let me tell you something. This stuff is... woo, it is messy. Like, there are glittery bits all over my patio. I wasn't sure where to get started brushing the pieces off. And then I was like, it's snowing. And as I'm standing there trying to get the gold off, I'm so mesmerized by the flakes. And I felt like I was in a giant snow globe. Anyhow, the point is, make sure you are in an area that you either don't care that you get this stuff all over the place, or you're outside to make sure that it's not getting all over your house. One thing I do know from watching Katja, if you guys are not familiar with her, she's a furniture artist. When you use this foil and the glue, it is beautiful. It's flawless. This, however, I noticed was having cracks all in it, which honestly, I don't mind. I love that kind of stuff. This turned out perfect for me, to be honest with you. I will absolutely be doing this going forward, using the Mod Podge, using the flakes. There's going to be DIYs. I'm going to be popping this in, so my patio gets used to looking like a snow globe, because I'm so here for it. So me being me and having to give y'all options, I'm like, we're going to also try this with these foil flakes from Dollar Tree. And I'm like, it has to be easier because they're bits. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're little bits. I can just pop them on the Mod Podge as it's drying. Right? Wrong. First of all, I can tell you the feeling of these is definitely different from the foil from Amazon. You know what it feels like? Bubblegum wrappers. Little rolled up bubblegum wrappers. Despite my best effort with this situation, it did not matter if it was tacky or not. These foils were struggling to stay in place. And when they were, since I guess they're like bits of foils or flakes, the flakes were kind of thick in certain sections from where, you know, they felt like balled up pieces of bubblegum wrappers. They were thicker, so I started just taking some of the Mod Podge and going over top a couple of them to see if that would hold them down. And honestly, after about 15 to 20 minutes of mucking with this, I was like, you know what? This hack with the Dollar Tree flakes is just not working. However, the Mod Podge hack to use with the gold flakes is absolutely stunning and gives a beautiful, beautiful vintage crackle look, and I love it. For this Mod Podge hack, I would recommend using wood with this. Now I have this live edge wood that I get from a vendor at the same market that I'm a vendor at, and I cut these suckers on down. We're gonna need some book pages, or you could use some dictionary pages, or regular paper, but nothing glossy or satin or sheen, people, okay? We're gonna use some water on a paintbrush to really trim down these pages to fit inside of our wood piece. And you can take this idea and remix it to whatever works for you. And you can get wood cut down at Home Depot or use a Dollar Tree wood piece. There's tons of wood pieces that you can take this idea and just do whatever type of DIY you want to do with it. But I personally say use wood because I just feel it's a little bit more forgiving whenever you're using a lot of like liquid on top of it than a glass or like a porcelain piece. When you're happy with the size you cut your paper down to, just decoupage them onto your piece and then pray this don't happen to you. What the hell is going on here? Oh my God, it's not coming out. I don't know why that grosses me out so much. It just reminds me of real boogers. I'm still over here gagging. Anyhow, you're going to want to just attach your paper down to your wood piece. And as you can see, I'm not necessarily carrying how much Mod Podge on here. I'm not doing it over wild, you know what I mean? Putting too much on, but paper is a whole different animal than napkin or tissue paper. And I'm even taking a little plastic tool here and squeegeeing it, pressing to the edge to squeeze out, well, if I can hold it in my hand, till I get the excess out at the edges. And then I just kind of grab the extra that puddles around the sides. This is just going to help keep your wrinkles down to a minimum. And usually paper is the easiest thing. If you're a beginner at decoupage, paper is going to be the go-to. You might have some little sections around the edges that are lifted and not completely sealed down. And that's fine, because our next part, our actual hack, is going to make sure that this paper is completely sealed down. I can't wait to share this piece with you, especially because I do decoupage art all the time. But this is just one that I love doing and using. You're going to need little bowls with a tiny bit of water in them for every color you plan on using. I'm using 3 for this, and to start out, we're going to do just like we would if we're going to make some stain art. We're going to water down our acrylic paint, and we only need a small amount. It took me a second here blending different colors because I was going for a certain blend here. I wanted to get really colorful with this piece. The reason you don't want to use any type of paper that is shiny or has a sheen is because it almost has a protective coating. So when you're going to do this hack and turn your paper different colors, it will prevent the Mod Podge and the paint and the water mixture from seeping in and actually creating the colored decoupage top layer. If you're one of the people that like to change the color of their papers and use coffees and teas, this is a really good way for you to skip all of that and just use a little bit of Mod Podge and add that to any color paint with a little bit of water, and you can change easily to anything you want. What is that? Why are you happening? Why is there Mod Podge boogers everywhere? I don't know what was wrong with this particular Mod Podge bottle, but anyhow, if you're going to ask me what ratio, people, I kind of wing it. And to be honest with you, I think I probably put about a tablespoon of Mod Podge in there because you want to make sure you have enough that when this starts to dry, it's going to seal over it. So when you're decoupaging a piece like this, and say you wanted to just add a little bit of brown with some tan and maybe some vanilla to create a vintage look, you can go right ahead and do that and just seal over the whole piece, and it's going to give you that effect. Now, obviously, you can get colorful like I am, and as long as you're making sure your brush is fairly dry when you're going about this, it's not going to rip your paper at all. Now you might be wondering to yourself, Brandi, why don't we just paint the thing, well, you want to add the water because it dilutes it so you can actually see through the paint better. And then you want to add the Mod Podge because as it dries, it's going to seal the paper. Instead of you just having soggy, wet paper and then having to really wait for that to dry before you try to seal over it with a plain Mod Podge, this is going to give you more freedom and more durability with the paper because it will start to wear down in time. Especially if it's wet, it's dry, and you're trying to put colors on it, it's going to get saturated. It's a different consistency. And you'll notice as you're working with this that the actual mixture is a little thick. So as you're applying it, it's drying as I'm going because it has that Mod Podge in there. Now, obviously you don't want to just do this to a piece of paper on its own because then the paper is just going to be nice and hard. That kind of came out wrong. Anyhow, you want to make sure that you're actually doing this on top of a piece like we did this wood, so that way it changes the color and seals it onto the piece all at the same time. If you want to just change the color of the paper, then use your normal coffee and tea DIY hack. We're going to take this stencil here and we're going to just make sure that it is applied on top of here really well. Also make sure that this is dry. It does not take long to dry. That's another awesome thing about coloring your paper. It does not take long. And then I'm putting a raised stencil on here. You could just do a regular stencil if you want, but I'm super in love with this Tim Holtz paste right now. So I'm using it every little opportunity that I get. Plus I do raised stencils a lot. And people, if you don't have a fancy schmancy spreading tool like I have here, just, use a spoon, a plastic spoon, anything. It doesn't really matter. Use a tongue depressor or a popsicle stick, whatever you guys call it. Just spread it on there with whatever you have laying around. It doesn't have to be fancy schmancy. And then when you're happy with it, just pull it on up. There are so many different ways you can use the top layer to seal your Mod Podge to color paper and create different DIYs. I absolutely love using multicolors and raised stencils over wood pieces to make ones like this. For this Mod Podge hack, grab yourself a bowl or something you like the shape of and feel you can mold onto it. And then give it a couple taps on the booty. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm sorry. I just ruined a perfectly good entrance moment. Let's do that again. Next, you're going to want to bring in the parchment paper. Or do you? We're going to get there. I'm going to explain that in just a second. And I'll take any information you guys want to dish out with me with that as well. You're going to need some water. And we're using this hard coat by Mod Podge, okay? Normally, I do a lot of glass art and you can use fabric and you can manipulate it. One of my favorite ways is to use tacky glue. But I recently discovered this hard coat by Mod Podge. You can use Mod Podge as well, but it's not going to get as stiff as this stuff. And Mod Podge actually has Stiffy to help stiffen up. I can hear my mom now as I'm walking to the craft section. Like, what do you need today? I gotta go buy some Stiffy, Mom. I'm sorry. I can make an inappropriate joke. I don't miss anything. But it really is a product. It stiffens your fabric. So what I was saying about the wax paper or parchment paper is that I struggled to get the tape to even stick to it. You know how like nothing's supposed to stick to this stuff? Not even the tape was sticking to it. So I just kind of flipped it over and prayed, I poured a healthy amount into about a quarter cup of water and then mixed this stuff on up to get a really nice consistency. If it's too thick, it's not going to really smoosh into your fabric. It's been my experience, or whatever you're trying to attach onto anything. I struggle with that when you leave your mediums really thick, so watering them down just a little bit allows some play and some absorption, especially when you're using a fabric. To start this off, and you can do this however you want, but I do recommend starting off on the bottom, creating like that base section on the very bottom, and then taking your pieces and attaching to the bottom. This way, when you're all done, you can take one more piece and attach it over the bottom, and it kind of smushes all the pieces together that you put around the piece you attached on the bottom. You'll see how I'm doing it here. And it just gives a good end result, in my opinion. It just kind of holds everything together a little bit better. And you can do this with all kinds of stuff. You can do this with just strips of fabric. You could do this with the little, you know, Dollar Tree leaves. You can do this with florals. It's just going to take a little bit of patience, especially because you're creating a bowl. So you're going to want to also let this sit for a full 24 hours. So the form takes shape. And I will tell you, people, feel free if you want to put color in here. It will color the burlap as you're doing this, so it comes out a different color. Or if you want to wait until this is completely dry and then paint it, you could put some stencils on here and then just seal right on over it. So here is me taking another little square after I'm happy with the shape of my little bowl I've created here, and I'm just putting it over all the pieces that are connected right to the bottom of our bowl in the center here. And then I decided it needed something else. So I grabbed some of this. I never know what it is, but it really just kind of looks like mesh and coral all at the same time to me from Dollar Tree. I wanted to create just like a little, you know, decorative piece on our bowl here. So I cut this thinner, dunked it on in our little mixture, and then wrapped it right on around the center of the bowl. And then I let this sucker dry at 24 hours. And I'm going to go live for you here real quick, people, because I want you to actually hear this as I'm doing it. This, like I said, it's 24 hours later. Watch this. Like, this sucker is hard, okay? Like, it is ridiculous how hard this thing is. You can beat it on the wall and it is just not falling apart. So you want to create something, that Mod Podge, that hardening Mod Podge is absolutely ridiculous. This bowl turned out super flipping cute. There are about 3 different Mod Podge hacks going on in this one project. I'm going to use this 14 by 14 t-shirt frame because this is the type of glass I wanted. I'm keeping this piece, but you use whatever you want to use and use any of these ideas. Now, one is going to be something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people have seen, where you can use Mod Podge to create a fake stain look on the glass. This piece of glass was really wiggly in here, and I decided to take some Gorilla Glue gel and glue the sucker to the frame so I didn't have to worry about it moving. And no, I'm not entrusting hot glue with that job, okay? It should go without saying that you need to clean your glass, all right? I'm just using some alcohol here on a towel and wiping this down, or a little paper towel I should say, and wiping this down. Next, we're gonna bring in our stencil. Now you can use whatever kind of stencil you want. I've been holding on to this lion for quite some time. I knew I wanted to use that for this particular project, and I was waiting for my next Mod Podge hack video for it. Now I'm going to flip my frame over and tape this onto the bottom where I want the piece to come through on the opposite side of the glass. And some of you may have seen this, where people take puffy paint and they trace a stencil, or they paint a design using puffy paint, and then they'll mix some of Mod Podge with some acrylic paint, creating the fake stained glass look, which we're going to get to. But first, let's talk about this hack. You're going to need some squeeze bottles. This was technically the only one I had. I wanted to do several, but I didn't have enough time to wait for Amazon to deliver me more squeeze bottles. So we're going to use this one and get the point across. Take your Mod Podge and put it inside a squeeze bottle. Then grab you some acrylic paint, whatever color you want, and squeeze it in there until you're happy with the way that that color is blending in with your Mod Podge. And then grab you some mica powder and then put it inside of the bottle. Make sure it's in frame, because I'm not in frame here, and then shake it on up. You're gonna have a nice mixture, and your paint is gonna have an awesome looking color. And the fun thing about this, for whatever reason, I don't know why it works, is this will come out like puffy paint. See how it's going on here, just like this? it's going to stay just like that. It's going to not lose the 3D puffiness, maybe just a little bit as it dries, but not a whole lot. And the best part is this also doesn't really bleed and go anywhere from other than where you're squeezing it. I'm taking the back of a paintbrush here just to kind of pull this DIY puffy paint around his little mane. So this is kind of two hacks in one. One, for whatever reason, the mica powder and the Mod Podge and the paint, it creates an awesome texture that gives a raised level to this as it dries. And then two, your paint, if you look at the mica powder and as this dries, you see it, it's going to have this beautiful shimmery look to it. It just looks amazing. I took the mixture in the bottle and I just basically used for the entire main part, and then to create the other colors, since I didn't have any more squeeze bottles, and if I did, I would have did the same thing. I just used Mod Podge and acrylic paint. And you'll be able to see in the reveal that just the Mod Podge and the acrylic paint alone do not create as much of a puffy layer as adding that mica powder. Like I said, for whatever reason, the mica powder just allows it like a textured 3D appearance. I mean, there's a noticeable difference that it's a little bit raised, but it's not as raised. I hope that makes sense. Plus, the color is really cool when you add the mica powder. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking, Brandi, why not just use puffy paint? To be honest with you, I don't really like using puffy paint because it takes too long to dry and I'm impatient. This whole project that you're watching me make here, it took me 45 minutes. Not kidding, 45 minutes. Like, it dried pretty much as I went, even the thick sections. You could use a dotting tool for this part, but I wanted something a little bit thicker to make the ends kind of stand out, and just use the end of one of my crusty bit paintbrushes to trace on all the extra pieces that belong to our lion here. The best part about making pieces like this is as you're coming to an end, you can see it really start to come alive. And working with glass, you can really bend colors. So that's why it's so awesome creating fake stained art, because you can blend it in different ways, different shades, especially when you're hanging something on the wall or if you're putting it in the window, and it will give you different looks. So I just added a little bit of water to the colors that I already had on here. So this way it was extremely translucent and just shaded in different little sections. When it was all dry, I took some black paint and I took some white paint and added in a couple little highlights in different sections. You can really see the beautiful mica powder in that black paint mixture, as well as how puffy it is compared to just the Mod Podge and the acrylic paint. Love how this turned out. For demonstration purposes, today we're going to be using one of Dollar Tree's houses I painted white and one of their stencils. I also haven't done a lot of ASMR lately, so for my ASMR lovers, I find all those sounds so satisfying. Anyhow, we're going to take some Mod Podge and we're going to apply it over the stencil. Then you're going to let this dry, and if you want, you could apply a second or third coat. It really depends if you're looking at the stencil and you see any gaps or any empty spaces still that the Mod Podge didn't squeeze into. The Mod Podge is creating a protective barrier around our decorative part of our stencil. This is going to allow our paint to only go onto the Mod Podge pieces, because any gaps, the Mod Podge done squeezed underneath of our stencil and hardened. So once we remove the stencil after we apply our color, we will see clear where the Mod Podge seeped and not any of our color. You could also accomplish this by using the same. I could have painted the stencil white and that would have also given us the similar effect, but I really love Mod Podge for this. Now I left this space right here with no Mod Podge so you could see what it looks like when it does bleed through in a section without having that on here. These stencils, Dollar Tree, I appreciate you, but these stencils are like a one and done kind of deal. I love how this hat can really make you look artsy fartsy even if you're bad at stenciling. It just helps clean up your stencil game. And you can see here what it would have been if I would not have put that Mod Podge on there. And because I really want you guys to see what's going on here, I'm showing you a super close up of how that Mod Podge, see the clear pieces around that paint? That's where your paint would have smooshed to if the Mod Podge wouldn't have got there first. This really is an easy way to elevate your DIY game with a little bit of Mod Podge. And just so you know, I really do use this hack. Here is a beautiful desk I created for my daughter with a lot of details in this stencil. I'll link this video down in the description box for you to check it out if you want more information. For this Mod Podge hack, you can use any surface really. Wood, glass, doesn't matter. I'm going to be using this, and we're going to be creating mica powder paint. I use mica powder all the time in my content, and I forget to talk about this often. I'm like, as I'm thinking about this Mod Podge video, I'm like, this is definitely a hack. It is definitely a way for people to get more creative, more unique, mixing different things. And what I love so much about this is it really sticks to any surface. I have used this on mirrors, I've used this on furniture, I've used this on regular wood, all kinds of things. The mica powder bonds so well to the Mod Podge, and it creates stunning, unique, with a little bit of like a shine to it look. And people, this mica powder is really inexpensive. I picked these up from Amazon, and I only picked them up because they were like the cheapest thing that they had. Don't start me lying to you. There was nothing special about the mica powder. It was cheap, so I purchased it. Now, to get started, you're just going to take some Mod Podge and mix it up. I decided to just use one plate, plop 3 different little sections of Mod Podge, and then I took my mica powder and I just tap it right on into our Mod Podge. Now, be mindful, because this stuff, no. See what happens when you get cocky with your tappiness? Eventually karma comes back to smack you like, nah, you're not that great. Anyhow, be careful. It's messy on its own, and if you over tap, it definitely makes a huge mess. And then mix it up. This is going to take a little bit of patience. It probably took me a good 10 minutes to mix the 3 of these together, because the mica powder is super, super fine. I just cut up a piece of sponge for this. You could absolutely ball up a tissue or a piece of paper towel. I've done that before. Just be mindful if it sheds. You could use a little coral sponge or a regular pouncer. Any of that would work. I don't recommend using a paintbrush for this, but you do you. Don't let me tell you how to craft. Because I want to create an ombre look, I'm starting with the darkest color first at the bottom. And I did 2 layers on these without blending anything, and I let them dry. Of course, it's all sped up so you guys don't see all that extra. But you can see we have the silvery white on the top and then the black on the bottom. And if you were using paint, I would tell you to have a paintbrush or a sponge, whichever you would be using at that point, that doesn't have anything on it to blend. But because we're using mica powder, this stuff is really thick, and it also gives a little bit of a texture. You're going to just alternate your sponges and go over the lines where they kind of meet each other, and just take your time with this. It's a really soothing, satisfying craft in my opinion, and I could just create stuff like this all day long. I just really enjoy the process. And going back and forth, you just get this beautiful blended look. Just take your time and then move the color up, and then take your lighter color and then go over the darker color, and you're just going to have such a cohesive appearance with the piece. And I do want to say that if you're going to do this on wood, let me know in the comments below if you want to see more with this type of stuff in the content. I will put DIYs in other Friday videos with different ways to be able to use mica powder as paint, and I'll show you different ways we can use it even with paintbrushes on different types of surfaces. I love this so much, and I think this would also look amazing with some candle wax in there and some little potpourri pieces at the top, just like a little decorative aspect of it. I really love how this turned out. And that's going to be it for today's top 10 Mod Podge hacks. As always, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, people. Let me know in the comments below if your #1 pick would have been different than mine. And until next time, bye!